Our special guest for the RORC Time Over Distance series is the race director for the 36th America's Cup in Auckland, New Zealand. Iain Murray will be in charge on the water as he has been for the last two editions in San Francisco and Bermuda. Murray has had an illustrious sailing career, 6 times 18-foot skiff world champion, 2 times Etchells world champion and 4 America's Cups as a sailor. Murray has 3 overall wins and 9 line honours victories with Wild Oats XI in the Rolex Sydney Hobart.
Well, it's my privilege to be on your show. We all have such wonderful memories of the UK and the RORC and all the wonderful things they've done for us as sailors in the past. So, happy to be here.
So I know you're a busy man, so let's start with the 18-foot skiffs. You won the world title a record 6 in a row, and the skiffs are the legendary stuff of Sydney Harbour and much farther afield as well. But I want to ask you this: how did it develop you as both a sailor and as a designer?
Well, look, the skiffs, I grew up in skiffs, Flying Ants and Cherubs, which were the Kiwi John Spencer designed boats, and they were development boats, and particularly the Cherubs are in the UK as well, and that's what I grew up with. It was, you designed your own boat, and essentially, I built the boat with my father in the backyard, and so it made me take to the drawing pad and design the shape of the boat. When I was 12 years old, I got off to an early start. Just where I started sailing at Middle Harbour in the little boats, which were development boats. And a very large part of the progression into the 18-footers was, the fact that they were a development boat. Back in my day at that time, out of the dinghies, you had to make a choice. You went down the Olympic route or you went down the skiff route, which was, judged to be professional. And, I didn't really have a choice. I had to go down the more professional route and have sponsors and hope to pay for, my boats and my design and my endeavours. So, that's the way it rolled out. But certainly, the skiffs and going down and watching them on Sunday afternoons with my father and watching them whip around, they were the equivalent to what we have now in Sail GP or the Cup. They were the fast boats sailing close to the shore, ferries following them with bookmakers. And, they are the fast and furious boats that were sponsored, at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry to say I've never seen it live, but I've seen some of the action and it's one hell of an atmosphere, and no corner given, no corner taken. I've seen some of that action, but come on, I've got to ask you for a good story from those days. Will you share us one?
Yeah, look, certainly the 18s. I went into the 18s, when I was 16 years old and left when I was 22. So I was young by comparison to the majority of the gang that were in the 18-footers. And I guess the skiffies, as they, are often referred to, are kind of like the pirates of Sydney Harbour. So, you can imagine there have been an enormous amount of adventures, but, certainly, a book full of memorable experiences, the 18-footer was probably, highlighted by the fact that, we won sort of against the odds in the first year, and that was all, we'd had a reasonable series. We were young, light kids, and, we went out in the last race. We trailed at every mark, and it was rough in New Zealand, and, it was big seas and quite a lot of wind from the northeast. And, we sort of threw caution to the wind and set the spinnaker, went home. past 6 boats and won.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of a bit of a miraculous, sort of unexpected win from the last mark, but it was typical of, I think the sort of attitude in the skiffs where, you did tend to throw caution to the wind in, the way you sailed the boat, the way you conducted your campaigns, and, the risks that you took in designing the boats and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, amazing. I've watched some of the action on the on the videos and stuff, and it looks incredible. And a couple of mates of mine, Rob Greenhalgh, I know he's been down there, and also
Yeah.
another mate who went down there with the Cherubs, and he's come back and told me about it. So yeah, no, that must have been an amazing part of your career, Iain.
Well, 6 years of sailing the 18 under the sponsorship of, Channel 7, and the boat was called Colour 7, and sort of the enduring, support from Channel 7, which, ran on for the next 30 years plus, past the skiff. It was it was a wonderful partnership, and it was part of what sailing in Sydney is about. Sydney Harbour and Auckland Harbour for that matter, and parts of Australia, Queensland, Western Australia. The 18s form a solid part of the history of, in the early days, transportation to and from the ports, and racing between the workmen and football players. There's just a wonderful history that predates so much of our racing.
Yeah. And flash forward to, 2020, 2021, and here we have these 75-foot, I've got to call them skiffs, in the America's Cup. But we're going to talk about the America's Cup later on. But I wanted to move on to the Etchells. 2 world titles, 35 years apart. And I've heard it said that your 1984 Etchells Worlds win is your standout achievement in an amazing career. Why is that?
Well, I think, 1984 was, it was young. It was sort of early days. I'd come out of the skiffs in 1982, and, it was my first foray into a sort of keelboat. Part of it was teaming up with Peter Gilmore and Paul Westlake, and we were looking for boats to sail and get experience before we rolled off into the Kookaburra America's Cup. And so it was, the Etchell was a boat that was in Perth. It was something we could sail, and we bought a boat and went to the World Championships. Essentially, it was just took delivery of the boat at the World Championships and jumped on board and threw some sails on, and just sailed. We sailed the boat as hard and fast as we could, and luckily enough for us, it was a bit like the we'll win in the skiffs. It was we had a come from behind race, and had to put some points on the incumbent champion in the class, Dave Curtis, to win that World Championships. We had to put 7 points on him in the last race, and with a lap to go, he was right behind us, and we managed to do that. So once again, it was a little bit come from behind and sort of make the most of the situation.
But what a transition, going from a fully planing 18-foot skiff to the Etchells, highly tactical, highly strategic, a much slower boat, but huge amounts of tactics and strategy. That's a quantum leap.
Yeah, look, it was a big leap. A lot of boats on the start line and stuff. And I think where we won that regatta was, sailing the boat downwind with a sort of lot of youthful energy and experience and ability to work the Etchell offshore downwind in Sydney, more like a skiff than a yacht. And, often, we were coming from behind and making use of, the downwind legs to make up substantial positions and run a very consistent scorecard throughout the regatta.
Wow. 1988, quite a year for you. I mean, winning the match racing worlds, defeating Paul Kayard, who would have been, fully in his prime, then joining Kayard on Il Moro di Venezia to win the Maxi Worlds. Talk about a change of boats there. And winning the 12-metre worlds in Sweden with Kookaburra. Do you think that winning is habitually, and is it a habit that you become more addicted to?
Look, we all like to win, don't we? Whether it's, in a boat or, for me, a boat is, there's two parts. There's racing it and developing it, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of, the preparation of the boat and the technology of the boat and everything. And of course, racing it is ultimately what brings you home and wins. And really all of that is an acknowledgement that you've done your job properly. And, you've prepared well, you've raced well, you've disciplined yourself well. And I think that's, you're trying to do that better than the other guy. And that's what winning is. I think it's just, it's setting your sights on something you want to do and doing it as well as you possibly can. So, for me, it's always been sort of trying to, fulfill to make sure that the boat is as good as it possibly can. And certainly, in the life of strategy and tactics, speed is a wonderful tactic to have in your toolbox. So, and look, racing, with your crew and the people you sail with, has created sort of wonderful lifelong sort of bonds, between, people that, we sail with. So, I often say that, what you do on a race boat is, not much different to, what we do in our lives and run our businesses and things like that. So I think, sailing is a wonderful sport that allows us to, prevail over a very long period of time, 35 years between Etchells Championships. But, the life skills that sailing allows us to employ and develop and continue with, it's just a wonderful sport.
Mm. Yeah, and you touched on the skill sets there, which are good life lessons. Offshore is another set of skills. 26 Sydney Hobarts, 3 overall wins, 9 line honours, including overall with Bumblebee 5. And you designed the boat, line honours and overall with a mighty Wild Oats XI. That's an unbelievably impressive Sydney Hobart. It might sound like a stupid question, but I'm intrigued. Why have you done the race so many times, especially as you've won at every level?
Well, I think it goes back to look, Wild Oats XI's a wonderful boat, and having competed on that 15 times out of 26 has been a remarkable adventure. The owners of Wild Oats XI, the Oatley family, back in Bob's day when he was around, his passion for, sailing, from the lawn at Middle Harbour Yacht Club when I was 9 years old with his kids to, his yachting world diamonds to, his early ocean races, winning the Admiral's Cup in 2002, was it?
2003, I think. I'll probably get slated, but yeah, 2003, I think Admiral's Cup.
And Wild Oats IX, which is another boat I built for Bob. And, look, it's really, sailing in the Hobart as much as anything. It's the boat, it's the crew, it's the family, it's just an annual get together that has been wonderful for a really tight group of sailors and people supporting the boat. It's just been pretty special.
Yeah, and I think sailors around the world are absolutely delighted that it's going to be running this year. That you're going to go for they're going to go for a quiet little drink down in Hobart.
Yeah, look, it's probably a little unfortunate that Wild Oats won't be competing this year. But for me, I'm here in New Zealand for the America's Cup, and with the quarantine and stuff, it wouldn't have allowed anyway. So luckily the stars have aligned for me there, and but it is great to see the Hobart race going ahead, and there will be a great lineup again, and we'll just sit this year out.
Now, I'm almost asking this with your designer's hat on here, Ian. We're watching the Vendée Globe, watching these foiling Amoca 60s achieving speeds of multi-hulls. Do you think in the Rolex Sydney Hobart there is a future for the 100-foot monohulls?
Look, the 100-foot monohulls, are people going to build more of them? Probably not. But look, 100-foot monohull, boats like Wild Oats and Comanche and Loyal and Blackjack, Scallywag, they've all been very attracted to the Sydney Hobart race. They are wonderful boats. And, how would they compete against, a modern foiling Hugo Boss? In the right conditions, both of them will have their day. Sydney Hobart races, it's not around the world race. It's not always reaching. A lot of the time it ends up dead downwind, and a lot of the time it ends up, dead upwind. And the 100-footer is going to prevail in probably both of those conditions. So, the reaching conditions, which are the record-breaking conditions for the Sydney Hobart, a Mocha 60s would probably dust off the things. But, the intriguing thing, where races are often won and lost is there's, 60, 70 miles at the finish when you go around Tasman Island that anything can happen. Light winds, no wind. We've seen that many times. Then you've got to get up the Derwent for the last 20 miles, and you've got to get out of Sydney Harbour. So, it's a race with a twist and a tail. And, it's not as straightforward as, off you go, 630 miles, fastest boat wins. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, you've got a bid on in Auckland over Christmas, haven't you? I know the America's Cup World Series finishes before Christmas. Are you going to be having one eye on the Hobart?
Oh, look, I get up every morning. I'm a sailing fan. I check the Vendée Globe. I check what's going on. I check the Formula One results and, who's on who in practice. It'll be the same for the Hobart race. Check who wins the Etchells races on the weekend. I'm down at the 18-footers every Sunday if I'm in Sydney. So, I'm sort of the hook's badly in my mouth,
Wow, okay. And, I can't not mention the star class. I think you 8 years with Dog Palfrey, including the 2008 Olympics for Australia in the star. The star, you were the only star in Australia, I think, at the time, which, is incredible itself. But I'm going to hone in on one thing here. Dog described you in a time over distance series as the king of tinkering. That's what he called you. And he was referring to a strut that you developed for a boom. I think it's fair to say that some of the other competitors had carbon booms, and this is your. It was totally legal, both theirs and yours. But in Olympic sailing, do you think that these design innovations are good for Olympic sailing, or should the organisers make it strictly one design?
Well, you look at the Olympics, what we have today is we have a combination of strictly one design, with the lasers, the Mistrals, and bits and pieces. And then we have, boats that are somewhat one design. We have one manufacturers like the NACRA 49ers, for example, but, sort of, in my job as a director for Australian Sailing on Olympics, what we see is that they're not one design. We have to buy multiple boats and multiple sails, and we get good ones and bad ones, and you've got to work your way through all of that. So, let's not kid ourselves that every boat is the same, and certainly, that is somewhat of an issue. The supplied classes boats, the Mistrals, lasers and stuff, there's always been, some complaints, and the manufacturers, I think, work super hard to try to get everything the same. But, these are hand-built boats, and not everything is the same. So, but look, going forward, the development boats in the Olympics, the 470s, the Finns, have provided a great base. The 470s, there's a really strong class, in Asia and Europe and stuff. And, Australia's had a wonderful run there with success, built around Victor Kovalenko and a variety of athletes and stuff that have continued to produce. So, I think sailing is a technology sport. I think we should encourage a mixture of both strictly supplied equipment, one design, and development classes. I think, the gravitation towards the development classes is strong. You look at the Moths and the Mockers and, what's going on in the Vendée right now, America's Cup. People like to express themselves through design and speed and technology. And I think the good thing about all of that is that, there's huge learnings for the people in the crew to actually understand the fundamentals and the important pieces that make up performance. So, if it all just came down to, look, there's your boat, go and figure it out. Here's an iPhone 12, and get online and figure it out. To me, that would be a sad day.
Okay, it's interesting to get your views on that. The America's Cup. You've been in 4 campaigns as a sailor, including a defence of the Cup with Kookaburra in '87. Now, this is a question that I really have to say. This came from Eddie Ward-Nowen, the CEO of the RORC. He wanted me to ask you, how does a racing team's budget, such as the Kookaburra Challenge in '87, compare with today's teams for the 36 America's Cup? And has the budget, the way it's allocated, become different?
Well, Kookaburra back in 1984 to 1987 was a very, it was a brand new challenge. It was sponsored by the Parry and Court family from Western Australia. And, we built 3 boats, but the Parry Corporation also, supported John Sanders sailing around the world, 3 times, and a lot of other activities. We spent on, building 3 boats, probably 2 new transoms, 10 keels, 200 sails. It was around a $20 million budget back in those days, 20 million Aussie dollars. At the time, that was around 12 or 13 million US dollars. At that time, it was around 60 cents to the dollar.
Right.
So, we got a lot of bang for our buck in those days. All those sales, all those people, 100 people employed. The big difference, you go back to my time, in Newport, Rhode Island, we got an allowance of $6 a day.
And what would that have bought you? Would that have bought you a burger and a burger and a beer? $6?
Yeah, probably.
If the sailors weren't getting paid anything like, let's just leave it there. You weren't getting paid a lot of money.
No, look, we were surviving is what we were doing. We were there to race. Our desire was to be at the America's Cup, and whether we got paid, hamburger money or not really wasn't the point. We were at the America's Cup, and that was at that time. It was one of the high peaks of sailing boats. Certainly from Australia's point of view, as a young guy standing on the shore and watching the Grettles and Gretel twos sailing up Sydney Harbour, that was what we aspired to do. That was the top of our mountain, and so it was get there at as quickly as you could, and get the continuation of your learning and your career was get to the America's Cup. So the America's Cup, a team these days is your largest single cost is people. They're much more professionally run. It's a profession for pretty much everyone in the team, and and so those costs will run away. The campaigns are not amateur. They're generally years of full-time employment. And the boats are big. The technology's vast. The rocks to look under are plentiful. So, we see these very large budgets emerging, because the America's Cup is leading the charge on technology and innovation in our sport. For New Zealand, my responsibility is the racing on water, and the event in New Zealand is run by the Challenger Record and the Defender.
And tell me, Iain, how has race management developed since the Cup went foiling?
Well, race management for the America's Cup took a really large step forward back in 2011, really. When Stan Honey and his gang of Silicon Valley friends, came up with the way to track the boats extremely accurately. And of course that was done as a way to bring our sport and the boats and the racing to the television screen in a very descriptive way, very understandable. And, what we saw, and, Stan being the great racing inventor that he is that, and the king of tinkering myself, and a lot of other really smart people like Ian Burns and, who was my partner in yacht design for many years, saw the opportunity and the technology that we could take race management electronic. And so, that developed back then, and it's been associated with the America's Cup and Sail GP ever since. That, we track the boats, we see the boats, we have them on Lifeline, we umpire them electronically, the penalties are incurred electronically, and it's very informative and very accurate way of running races, and typically, running races in the confines that they're now run, with the restrictions of time and the efficiencies required to run them. These tools have been an incredible advancement over, what has been run for a life in traditional sailing.
Mm. Just tell us a little bit about, that's a fantastic overview, Iain, but just tell us a little bit about the hardware that you've had to employ in the last two cups, and you're going to employ in this one, in terms of getting the right race management. What hardware are you going to have out there?
Look, it's all quite simple now. It's we have we have to track the boats is what we need to do. We track the boats, we track the marks, and we bring them all into custom built software, and that software provides to servers, it provides TV, it provides race management, provides umpiring, and that information, which is pretty simple hardware really, but it's the high quality GPS that tracks the boats, to very high definition, is the key to making accurate assessments of the race management. So, I operate, just on a laptop, no different to your laptop. But it's got some very nice software, and, there's a very nice back of house that, sorts all of this information out on the server for everyone. So, look, there is a substantial investment to do that. And certainly, I know Stan, through the technology group of World Sailing, has been looking at ways of, developing this and it becoming a club tool. We see the development of autonomous marks and I guess with the sort of environmental responsibilities that we have these days, the desire to, reduce, powered assisting boats and powered everything. And so it's all in front of us. The technology is available. It's just, making it usable and understandable and affordable for, clubs and yacht clubs. So, it's all part of the technology washdown, from the America's Cup.
And as you say, the heart of that is military grade GPS to measure position and speed.
That's it. Know where the boats are to within 20 millimetres, 10 times a second.
That's quite incredible. Quite incredible. The last two editions of the America's Cup have been in multi-hulls. The naysayers believe that this takes away much of the strategy and the tactics. What do you say to that?
Well, I look heading into San Francisco, with 72-foot catamarans, the AC-72s. I think there was a lot of speculation that match racing was not going to be the same. There wasn't going to be covering, there wouldn't be high-speed turns, there wouldn't be dial-ups, there wouldn't be slam dunks, all of the terminology that we've grown used to in, the 12 metres and the IACC boats, that, the boat-on-boat racing wouldn't happen. And these boats would, like any catamaran prior to foiling, would just sort of, come in, have a very slow turn and, would bang either side of the race course. Interestingly, they probably started out like that, the boats were traditional catamarans, and there was a little bit of lift with their sea foils, and and then New Zealand popped out with, initially the skimming boat and then the foiling boat, and and so the progression through the San Francisco America's Cup series was a vertical learning curve for, I think, all of the participants, and the beneficiary out of that was, some amazing races. And by the time the America's Cup came around and the boats, went from catamarans turning, difficult turning initially, to, the employment of the raking of the boards to step the boats through attack, and take, many seconds out of attack, into then actually skimming to foiling, and then foiling to foiling tacks, all of what happened in the Cup. And as soon as, the boats went to foiling tacks, the catamarans were tacking faster than any monohull. The loss of speed, I remember sitting at the screen in San Francisco, 24 knots into the tack bottom speed of 21 knots. You know, it's like unheard of. And so that, of course, opened up the tactical positioning of the boats. The bottom gate. In San Francisco, we had Alcatraz and the current lee behind it, and all of a sudden, a strategic tactical race of match racing had developed about fighting for the rounding, fighting to get into the shore, the tactics to get out of there, the short tacking up the San Francisco coast. And, we had a new form of match racing.
That's incredibly well put. From a race management perspective, you're saying that effectively VMG was surprising. Did you have to alter the length of the course, the width of the course, to match that change in the anticipated speed?
Yeah, look, we're from a race management point of view, we're given sort of target lengths to the course. Target length for the upcoming course is 25 minutes. So, we'd like to get two boats finishing right next to each other at somewhere in the 24-minute range. So having the ability to control the race course, position it accurately, make amendments to the race course during it. So having a great crew on the marks, picking them up, moving them around, making sure they're aligned with the wind, adjusting the length to get to our target race time is all part of, race management. That has become, very challenging in Sail GP, where, you have to run a race to within 30 seconds because, that's the provision of a very tight TV schedule and to keep the racing proper and do all of that, it keeps you on your toes. And, in Sail GP, when a lap of the course might only take 5 minutes to make all of those changes and bring it home, move things around, and to do it is, you as a race manager and the crew that support you, you are high speed dancing.
Wow. I hate to leap over Bermuda here, but I think what you're saying is really interesting for the 36th edition in Auckland. Can you tell us, I'm sure, there's some weather experts out there that can answer this, so it's in the public domain. What sort of wind range are you expecting for the 36th America's Cup?
Well, we've all, experienced Auckland a lot. And, you might remember back to, my part of our early discussion today was me coming home in the last race in 30 plus knots of northeast breeze and strong outgoing current, which was effectively where course C will be the main course for the America's Cup will be held. That's where we sailed 18 footers back in 1977. So we return. The public will be on North Head and everything. The predominant breezes in Auckland are northeast and southwest, probably more southwest than northeast. The northeast is, will probably come later. But we also saw back in the IACC boats, I think there was a record run where there was no wind or too much wind and no sailing. So, it's a volatile part of the world. It's not dissimilar to Bermuda. It's a relatively small land mass, down here in the roaring 40s. And, what's coming across the ocean is a big part of what we get. Obviously, there's localised sea breezes and bits and pieces. So, I think it's recognised that the sailing down here is great. It's produced a lot of unbelievable sailors and everything. So, we're probably going to race between 7 and 23, 24 knots of wind. And we can get that from pretty much most directions. We had the 49er Worlds and the NACRA Worlds down here last year in November 2000, 19, and there was a big variety of conditions. So I think, like Bermuda, I think teams need to be prepared for everything down here.
And I had a little look at the course diagrams, and looked like a Windward Lure course to me. Ian, have you got any other options?
No, we're very much, the race course is fairly simple. There's a start up from the bottom a little bit, trying to contain the race course area in an exclusive zone that, the harbour master has created for us. And typically that's, 0.8 of a nautical mile by 1.8 nautical mile. That's our playground. And we will put a course a little bit inside that, as and depending on the wind strength and current strengths and environmental considerations of, are we out off Takapuna, or are we down in the back paddock, or are we off North Head? We'll be putting in a course of, 25 minutes. It's a longer course than we've had in recent times. And these boats are going plenty fast. So, there will be a few laps of those courses to do that. But, we return to the traditional match racing entry at 2 minutes 10 and 2 minutes, and an upwind start. What we've seen with these boats is that they're incredibly fast on the foils, but getting onto the foils, is probably a little slower than the cats. So, the maintenance of the foiling and the speed and protection of that in the start, will be critical tactics.
It's going to be absolutely amazing to watch. Unfortunately for me and a lot of people from afar, but it's really special for the people in New Zealand to have the cup, back in Auckland, and it looks like it's going to be a full on for spectators. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere there, Ian.
Yeah, look, Auckland is like it's a wonderful city. It's built around a wonderful harbour, and the Kiwi sort of heritage around the water prevails. And so I think most people in Auckland appear to have access to a boat or own a boat, and probably a huge amount of those people are going to come and watch the races. So, as you say, the atmosphere, the build-up, you see it at the launching of the boats. The participation by the Kiwis is immense. Their support of their teams is probably unparalleled around the world, with their rugby, cricket, sailing teams. Their sort of hit rate in the Olympics, for their population's incredible. But there's a lot of heavy hitters coming here to take the Kiwis on, and I think everyone is waiting in anticipation to see what these boats can do, where everyone stands, and probably the expectation that over the racing and development in the Prada Cup is that the Defender going forward is going to be in a very strong, tough, and hard-fought America's Cup.
Yeah,
with a very good Defender.
It's going to be incredible. I'm really looking forward to racing starting, I believe, on the 17th of December in the America's Cup World Series, with 4 days of racing, including the Christmas race, which is a knockout, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It's 4 races on that day. The boats are all out there now. They're sort of tuning and looking at each other and everything. We start official practice on the 8th, and so the momentum is gathering, and the race time's coming.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it will be, but let's hope for a good, clean fight. And Iain, thank you for an amazing chat on your career and what's going on down in Auckland. And I'm sure I speak for the RORC to say we wish everybody fair wins for the 36th America's Cup, and also for you and your team, Iain. Have a fantastic competition. We're all going to be watching.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, and check in at any time. But I'm sure we hope to bring you, some incredible sailing from down here in New Zealand, and for all of the RORC members and stuff. Take a seat, buckle up, and stand by.